Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Making Seamless Sales Show. My name is Art Fromm, and this is the debut show. So I am very glad that you're here. Thank you for joining live. If you are live and you would like to drop in the comment where you're calling from, I'd love to hear that. If you are watching the recording or listening to the audio, thank you very much. And you can always connect with me later through teamsalesdevelopment.com. What I wanted to do tonight, and this is going to be every Thursday night at 7 p.m., is just run you through what the purpose of this show is, how it might help you, what it's going to do for you, and the format so that you could participate fully as we go through. So again, my name is Art Fromm. I'm with Team Sales Development, and the purpose of my company is to help sales teams to perform better. So why this would matter to you is whether you're in sales or whether you're just involved with any type of persuasion, this show should help you with how to make those interactions more seamless. So, yes, this is about sales, and sales at its heart is about persuasion. And as such, we are all involved with persuasion in one way or the other, whether it's actually selling a product, a piece of equipment, a solution, or just persuading somebody to try to do something that you feel is appropriate for them or that you would like them to engage with. So why this matters to you, what I would say is no matter who you are or what walk of life you're from, and by the way, in the chat, if you also want to put what your job function or your job title is, this is going to help you be more successful with a win-win outcome. You're going to hear me talk about that a lot. That's a big theme that I have in terms of sales, because sales can sometimes be a maligned topic. Many people try to avoid salespeople, and I can understand why. I've had some salespeople in the past that were just too pushy or just didn't, seem to care about what I wanted. We've all run into the salespeople in the you know supermarket, well, maybe not a supermarket, but in a department store, a clothing store, a shoe store, that are like, hey, can I help you? And they may be very pushy. That's not what we want to be. So whether we're trying to persuade somebody or sell something, we want to be helpful. We want a win-win outcome. So why would this show matter to you, and why might you want to be interested in attending either live or joining in the recordings as they come out each week? Well, I believe first and foremost is that it will help you to be more successful with having those relationships that allow you to be more persuasive. And if you're in a sales role where you truly are selling something, you've got a solution that you're providing, it should allow you to generate more revenue. It should allow you to increase your margins so that you don't have to discount in order to sell. And it should allow you at a personal level to have more recognition, more success, and things like that. So even if you are just trying to persuade somebody about something, maybe you're on a committee or maybe you're in charge of a group of people, perhaps you're a manager and there are things that you'd like them to do in a certain way, or maybe things need to change, this should allow you to have more success with that type of an approach. I also feel like from a personal value perspective, this will give you more personal value. So if you're looking to develop your career, if you're looking to move on maybe to another career opportunity or something like that, these are some of the techniques and some of the approaches that will be able to help you do that. So, who is this for? Who can benefit from that? Again, anyone that's in sales, and whether you're persuading somebody about a group of where they should go or what you should do, perhaps you're trying to pick what movie you want to go to with a group of friends or what restaurant to go to, or you're trying to decide on a vacation that you want to go to, or you're working with clients who can benefit from your solution. These are all things that will help you. If you are selling yourself, so many people, a lot of colleagues that I have are working on things like helping others. They do coaching and those types of things. So you're selling yourself, not just some services, but really what your knowledge is and things like that. This will help you as well. Where this really excels and my sweet spot is very, very complex sales, supply chain, software, telecommunications, IT, those types of things that involve longer sales processes and more complex buying decisions where you typically are involved with five, six, seven, eight, maybe even 12 different decision makers, that's where the full methodology that I offer really excels. However, at the same time, many of the concepts that we're going to use are very simple in ways that could be used in other applications. So I'm going to try to do a combination of both, where whatever type of persuasion you're involved with, it can help you in either one. Now, some resources that you can explore. The name of this show is Making Seamless Sales, and I'll address the elephant in the room right away here, is that this is designed after and patterned after my book. So let me just say, I'm not trying to sell my book. This is not about book sales. You don't make money off of book sales. This book, if I could just back up a little bit, this book is the culmination of 40 years in my career where I was initially a customer and a consumer of technology. Then I was involved in sales and sales management roles. And for the last 25 years or so, I've been involved with sales enablement. So I've done all those different roles. And what this book and what this show is about is to share with you. I want to give back. I want to help you with a very unique perspective in terms of the way that I've experienced sales and selling and enabling sales to help you with that and get, little pieces that you can utilize in whatever aspect you'd like to. So the book itself, yes, that's part of this. And I'll show you during the break how you can have more access if you're watching on any of the feeds. And certainly if you go to the talkradio.nyc website, you'll see in the show notes and in the other descriptions other ways you can get at that information. So it's about sharing with you. Now, just very, very briefly, and this is more so that you know how you could pick my brain, which, by the way, I do want to have you participate. So if you're on any of the live streams, there's a way you can connect, and Jesse is watching those feeds and will relay to me any comments or questions or anything you have. The show is going to be divided up into three main segments. The first segment is going to be sharing a little bit. Now, tonight I'm using that for the introduction to the whole series and the whole show. Normally, for the next show we're going to do in 1 week, I'll share with you some insights, maybe a situation that I saw, maybe something that I encountered, and certainly something to help tee up the subject for that show. The middle part of the show is going to be a guest. So it will be a guest that is either, a colleague of mine that's also helping with these things, somebody that I've learned from. Certainly it will be some guest that you will learn from in terms of their experience and having implemented some of these things or having experience with it. And then the third part, the final part of the show for maybe the last 10 minutes or whatever, is going to be answering your questions. If anybody's been around long enough, you might remember Dear Abby in the newspaper. That shows you how long ago that was. But the idea with Dear Abby is, you could write in a question like, "Hey, I'm having this problem," or "Here's a situation that I'd like some help with." And when that happens, then the response comes. So what I would like to do is offer the opportunity for any of you, and maybe I just thought of this actually when I was going through what I was going to talk about tonight. Maybe it's like the Dear Artie part of it. I don't know. It's a little corny, but maybe catchy. But Dear Artie, here's a situation I'm in. What do you think about this? Or you might just be curious about some aspect of the book or some aspect of consultative selling. So those are the types of things that we'll do is for the show. And therefore, just very briefly, to wrap up this segment of the introduction, I did start as actually a mechanical engineer, and I got involved with the software space very, very quickly because it was new technology at the time in the early 80s. I was fascinated by what the possibilities were. And I shifted to implementing systems inside of the companies I was working for. So I was like, you could say maybe the IT person, but it was really more than that. It was applications that helped the engineers do their job and helped us to do all of the different projects we did for our clients. So, and as a result of that, I was a customer. I was the one that was being sold to. I was the one that people were trying to take the money from. I had the budget. I was the one that started to, try to implement things and find out what should I do. That led to sales and sales management roles because one of the companies I was working with, who I used at the time, I was very involved with them, they recruited me to come on board. So my career shifted to sales roles. And initially, it was more of a pre-sales role, a sales consultant type role. And then I did do sales roles where I carried a bag, quote unquote. I also did a role where I did everything from the beginning all the way through the end of the sale. So from hello all the way through success. And then that led to sales enablement because I was doing some things with my team that the company wasn't really providing. So I worked for a number of companies doing these sales roles. And one of the last company that I was with, they were teaching their pre-sales or sales engineers about the products and the solutions and the features and the functions, which is important, obviously. What was missing though was the sales acumen, the consultative selling, the understanding of the client. So I started to do that with my team, and my company liked it so much, they said, let's go ahead and move you into sales enablement. So they moved me into sales enablement, and this goes back 25 years ago inside the company. I was doing sales enablement roles inside the company to help all of the rest of the sales engineers and the salespeople with some of that consultative selling aspects. Then in around 2004, I wound up going on my own and actually joined a global learning company. At that global learning company for about 3 years, I was also doing sales roles, and that's where I met one of the partners that I want to talk with you about. And he's going to be my special guest next week, actually. We've known each other for over 20 years. And then I ultimately went on my own since 2009 with team sales development. But we're coming up to a break here, so I just want to tease you a little bit with the book. I'll explain when we come back from the break why this is called Seamless Sales and why this says the SE and the AM is capitalized here. That has to do with the methodologies that I'll talk about and also some of the insights that I can give you. Um, by the way, Steve Bistritz, John Kerr, and Peter Cohan are three partners that I've been working with that I'll talk a little bit more about when we come back from the break, who helped me with my career and are key parts of my overall portfolio. They also wrote forwards for the book. So let's go ahead and we'll transition into the first break here. So I'll see you back in a minute or two.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a purpose-driven individual looking for deeper healing, clarity, and growth? Welcome to the Expansion Room, a transformative space for purpose-driven individuals. I'm Siobhan Larice, host, licensed therapist, and coach. Join me every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Welcome. So I want to talk a little bit more and help you out with why this matters. And I want to give you a couple of key concepts from the book in just a moment, but I also want to recognize the show that was just on before me, Serving Up Success with a Splash. And I appreciate that Bruce mentioned that my show is next, and we've got a great collaboration. I hope that at some point we can maybe cross-pollinate a little bit and I could be on their show and they could be on my show because they're a great group. So watch for them 6 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays. And their shtick is that they make a drink during their show. So that's what it's about. And tonight's drink had to do with clarity. So it ties in with their theme. But I said I can't do their drink until after my show. So anyway, thanks for them for making that call out and back at you. All right. So a little bit more about the book and why this might matter to you. And again, if you are in sales, pre-sales, business to business type sales, complex sales, this is really going to resonate for you. And then, as I said, I'll take some of these topics and make it, we'll talk about that in just a couple minutes. Take one of these complex topics and make it something useful for anybody. But just a moment about the book and why I called the show what I called it. Making Seamless Sales. I started this out because I noticed through my career that, well, let me back up a little bit for those of you that might not be familiar. In most complex sales, there is a technical sales type person and a sales type person. And the reason for that is simple is that back in the day, in order for anything to work, you had to have what essentially was an engineer who knew how to run the software, the equipment, or whatever. And then the salesperson would be more like the front person that would show the stuff and, close the sale and all that. I started out as an application engineer. So I was needed in order to make the thing run, and at that time it was information management, make the information management system run so that it could be shown to a client that the salesperson was working with. And as such, it was intended to be a partnership. Very often, though, it was very distinct, and we'll get into this more in future shows. There's a lot of differences in terms of personality, there's differences in terms of the focus, just the aspect of technical sales, and then the salesperson, it's like technical and business. Now, the key is for them to work together better. Unfortunately, a lot of things have conspired against that over the years. It started in two different groups. Even today, most business to business organizations still have two different groups. There's a pre-sales group. The job titles are often called solution architect, solution engineer, sales engineer. It might be other types of titles along those lines. And then you have the other group, which is the sales folks, and that could be a SDR, a BDR. So these are people that are involved very early, a account executive, an account manager, and other roles like that that make up the sales role. Both of these groups at an individual level, at an opportunity level, need to work together seamlessly, but that does not always happen. And one clue is the fact that they often are in two different groups with two different management chains that very often report at a higher level together. So, having experienced both of those roles through my career, both as a customer, a client who was, I always talked to my application engineer from the company I was working with because I needed them to be implementing the technology, but I still had to go through the salesperson who was making me sign the deal, we would negotiate and all that stuff. So I experienced that as a customer. Then when I came into sales, I experienced that as being both of those roles. And even in one case, I was both of those roles at the same time, which meant that it was even more challenging. And maybe I'll talk about that on a future show as well. Now, come to fast forward today, and the reality is that those two roles still are not working together great. Now, let me just have a caveat here and a huge shout out for anybody that's doing this that has figured it out. Congratulations. And you know that you are excelling. Studies right now from Salesforce and a whole bunch of other people show just the mere fact that the two types of sales roles work together better seamlessly, the win rate can increase by 37%. Now, that's with really not much else changing, just those two roles coming together more seamlessly. So I set out with my book because I've experienced this and I just saw it in all my workshops that I deliver. I often do it with only pre-sales or only sales, sometimes thankfully together. But I constantly see that there's still this friction or this, I don't even think it's resistance. It's just sort of the nature of the beast where they're not working together. So I started out, gosh, it was 2 years ago now, I guess. Yeah, well, yeah, basically 2 years ago coming up that I started writing this book because I said, I got to capture this and share this with everybody. And I started with the idea of pre-sales and sales trying to work together and how that could help. Well, all of a sudden I realized I can't talk just about that without going upstream in the sales process. In other words, left in the sales process to what happens before sales and pre-sales get involved. What happens with the client who's looking through the website, or what happens with the client that has been contacted maybe through a call. And then moving right in the sales cycle, in the buying cycle, frankly, what does that look like for client success and making sure that the client is working properly? So I had to expand this out to include the entire cycle of engagement from hello through implementation and renewals and commitment. Now, again, this is business to business. This is SaaS selling. So for some of you, this doesn't apply. The good news is, though, there's a lot of lessons learned along the way that we can extract out and talk about that helps. Back to the book real quick. Making seamless sales is a play on words. And my grandson was quick to pick up on this because I'm pretty, they always count. They start counting how many dad jokes is Papa gonna do, And very quickly we're up to 5 or 6 within the first hour of being together. And he goes, there must be a dad joke there or something. And the point is, yes, there's a meaning for this to be capitalized. And it's because my focus is the SE pre-sales, sales engineer type role or solution engineer type role, working together better with the account manager or sales type role. So this is about making the experience more seamless, seamless internally to win more business and seamless for the buyer or the customer so that they have a better experience as they're going through it. So that's the idea. And why is that important? Because the main theme here, and please, if there's one takeaway for tonight that I want you to take away, is it's about client success. So whether you're selling a solution, whether you're trying to convince somebody about something, whether you're even in an argument or whether you're in a negotiation, the outcome should always be win-win because there's only four possibilities. There's win-win, there's win-lose, there's lose-win, and there's lose-lose. And what I learned a long time ago was anything other than win-win is going to result in lose-lose. If you're trying to win at somebody else's expense, that's not going to be good. If somebody's trying to win at your expense, that's not going to be good. So win-win is the outcome. And that's the idea here with seamless sales. So what I want to get into is a quick example from this materials that applies really in any situation. And I would encourage you to apply it to your situation, whether it's heavy duty sales or whether it's just trying to figure out where to go to watch a movie or, do a group exercise. So what I'd like to focus on a little bit here is that although this is called making seamless sales, it's not about the sale. It's about the buy. It's not about us trying to push our solution or push an answer or push some advice. It's about getting the other person to be receptive to us. It's about getting that person to buy. So turn it from a sell to a buy, turn it from a push to a pull. The other person wanting to know more and wanting an answer and wanting help. And this is, we could even go into whatever 12-step programs or whatever. A lot of it is acknowledgement that there's a problem, right? And wanting to seek a answer, a solution. That's when the magic starts to happen. Otherwise, if we're just trying to push and push a solution, that's probably not going to go anywhere. And one of the three people, and I alluded to them very quickly, Steve Bistritz, who's going to be on next week. He's really about the sales methodology largely. Peter Cohan, it's all about how we present or demo our solution. And then John Kerr, and John does a lot of mastering technical sales. So it covers the gamut, and I uniquely am positioned to have partnerships with all of them. Nobody else does. Nobody else has partnerships with all of them. I can bring to the table that. And one thing I want to share with you right away is John has an expression which I still think came from him. He thinks it came somewhere else. I didn't find it anywhere else. And it's your solution has no inherent value. Your solution has no inherent value. Whether it's great advice you want to give somebody, whether it's a product you're trying to push or sell on somebody, they don't care. Our solution might be the exact answer. We might have the thing that they want the most, and yet they might not be that receptive to it. And one example, quick example before we take another break is if you go to the doctor and you say, I'm sick, and the doctor says, oh, I've seen that before. Here's what you need to take. And they give you a prescription. How likely are you to believe that doctor or feel comfortable compared to you go to a doctor, you say you feel sick, and they start to ask you questions. Well, how are you feeling? When did this start? What else have you noticed? Have you done anything about it? Have you tried anything? Has anything seemed to work? Does it get better? Does it get worse? Now, when they've asked those questions and we're participating, we know they care about us. Now we're more open to their suggestion. And here's the thing, their suggestion, their answer, their prescription may be identical to the first doctor. But who do we believe and trust more? The second doctor. And why? Because they took time to care about us and understand what it is we're trying to do. So that's the idea here. And in sales, we call that discovery. It starts with qualification, a little bit about what the situation is, and we're discovering, even prior to that, if the client has interacted with our website or with our marketing people, what have we been able to find out about their situation so that when we start talking with them live, we can review what we know, just like a hospital chart. Okay, so I understand you said this and you said this and you said this. And now what we could do is go forward with more discovery to dig deeper in terms of what it is that's happening. When we've done that extra level of discovery and show our true interest in them, it's not about us, it's about them. Now they may even start to say, so what do you recommend? What do you think I should do? And now we've got that pull instead of the push. So the idea here is it's about client success. It's about what they're trying to achieve, the pain they're trying to solve, or the gain they're trying to achieve. And when we understand that, now we know what the target or the outcome is. If we don't know that, we're guessing. We're throwing it up against the wall to see if it sticks. Or as we say in Great Demo, we're doing a harbor tour of all the possibilities. But unfortunately, that's not going to cut it. So when we come back from the break, I'll give you a couple key elements that can help out with how we can get that once we've got their attention and, in terms of they see that we really care, what is it we can do to then start to offer the solution in a way that's a win for them and a win for us. So we'll be back in about a minute or two and we'll continue with that discussion. Misalignment within your sales team or with a client stalls deals and creates unnecessary friction for you and the client, resulting in up to 37% lower win rate. If you're in pre-sales, sales, sales management, or sales enablement, and you'd like to increase revenues, win rate, margins, client satisfaction, and stay competitive, this show is for you. Hi, I'm Art Fromm, host of the Making Seamless Sales Show. Please join me live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marcanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
All right, everybody, welcome back. And again, if you are live right now, I'd love to hear from you. Please put in the chat or whatever opportunity you have to give some comments, where you're calling from, where you're listening from, and your job title or your role or what you do in life. And certainly if you have any questions or anything you want to add some comments, I would love to hear that as we go through as well. So what we were talking about was the idea of making the sale seamless, but really making the buy seamless and making the decision seamless. So once again, whether you're persuading somebody to go somewhere or you're trying to sell a million or billion-dollar deal, all these things are applied to the situation. And the key point was our solution has no inherent value, which means we need to find out what value they see. Why would they care about our solution? In the case of the doctor that I gave, it was about we were feeling ill. We had a problem. We didn't feel well. We wanted to get better. And we trusted the doctor who, asked more questions and learned more about us. So let's jump a little bit to a relatively simple formula that has many complex permutations to it, which I've covered in the book in great detail. And that is a very simple formula of what is value. So, what is value? And in my workshops, I often like to ask this, what do you think is value? And I get all kinds of different answers like, well, something that means something to me, something that I like, something I can use, and all that. And that's all true. I define value as the intersection of the needs that a client has. So let's talk about a sales situation. So we're trying to sell a solution. We're trying to convince somebody that, the what we offer is what they can benefit from. What we want to do is first find out their needs. So if you think of a Venn diagram, think of the right side of the Venn diagram being the needs collectively. Now, those needs could be all kinds of different things. It could include things that we might be able to help with. It'll include things that we definitely can help with, even as we start asking the questions the way a doctor would do to do the discovery. We can ask questions that might lead to somebody understanding there's things that they might need that they hadn't have thought about. Now, we're not proposing anything yet. We're just listening and we're asking questions about their needs to find out what their situation is. On the other part of the Venn diagram, think about a circle that is overlapping with the needs, but that circle is our potential solutions. All the possible things that we could offer that we might be able to help them with, but we're not sure yet which things would matter. I have many clients that offer multiple different things. I've got some clients that offer, like a supply chain client, for example, they offer everything from, let's say, design through manufacturing all the way through refurbishment. Those are very distinctly different needs. And depending on who they're talking with, that client may or may not need all that stuff. One thing for you to think about, maybe some homework, is what types of things do you offer and what categories do they fit in? So the overlap of the needs of the client on the right hand side and the solution that you offer, that overlap in the middle, which may be smaller or might be big, that's the only part that your client or your buyer cares about. They don't care if you have a dozen things that they can't use. And frankly, they don't care if there's things that they need that you can't help. It's where that overlap is. So where your solution addresses their needs, that's where value comes. Just like beauty, value is in the eye of the beholder. Now, unlike beauty, which is typically something that comes naturally and is sort of inherent, remember, our solutions have no inherent value. With value, in order to have that perception, in order for the beauty, the value to be in the eye of the beholder, we want to create that, and we create it by finding out what their needs are. And generally speaking, again, I don't want to go too deep on any one of these topics to give you a good takeaway for today, but generally speaking, the needs, what they are saying that they need, that's going to be things like, for example, pain, a problem they have, or a gain, something they're trying to achieve. And our solutions could be a variety of things that address that. So that's the overlap of the needs and the solution. Where that overlaps is value. Now, you might think, okay, well, we're done. We found out the value. We found out what they value. And if they value it, they must want it. Well, I'm just going to add a couple of additional components today that need to be thought about. And this is true in life, business, the universe, and certainly in sales. It would be great if all they needed to do was see the value. And based on the value, let's say that it's something that they're looking to generate more money. They want to save some time. They want to have more productivity. And if they saw that they could immediately, by implementing our solution, get that value, we would think that they would just want to move forward right away. So now what we're going to do is imagine a scale. So a scale meaning a scale, an old-fashioned scale where you have weights that you could put on one side or on the other side. And the way we're going to look at this scale is if the scale tips to the right, that's value. So if the scale tips to the right, that's a decision in our favor. They want what we have. They see that we can fulfill their need. They perceive value. And a ridiculous example is let's say that they saw that they'd get $70,000 of value right away for, whatever it is that we're providing. And that's all that's needed. Well, they would probably decide very quickly, and the scale would tip very dramatically, and they would decide in our favor. The scale would tip to the right, and they would want that. The other two components that I want to add, though, to think about is that value is counteracted by risk and cost. Risk and cost. And if you're listening to this, by the way, later or even now, you may want to tune in to the YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, or Twitter, X, to see the recording of this so you could see some of the visuals that I'm trying to create with my hands here as we go through, because we've got value on the one side that's tipping the scale to the right. But unfortunately, the other side of the scale that would go against us is going to be the perception of risk and cost. Risk and cost. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, cost is pretty obvious. Cost is the investment that needs to be made, or the whatever it needs they need to put into it. So that might be price, it might be the purchase price, it could be the investment in training, it could be in the investment of writing off equipment. For a personal decision, cost could be the investment of giving something up, or spending time on something, or literally, deciding to spend your money one place versus another place. So as you can tell, the more the value, the less the cost is going to matter. So the scales are going to tip to the right. If the cost is too high and the cost or the perception of it outweighs the perception of value, they won't move forward. Why would I invest $100,000 in a solution that's only going to give me $70,000 worth of benefit? Not going to do it. Doesn't make sense. So the scale would tip in the wrong direction against us. The other thing that works against us on that left-hand side of the scale is risk. Now, we probably through this series will talk about many different types of risk. This particular risk that I want you to think about is the risk of moving forward with the solution. The risk of moving forward with the solution. And think very simply in terms of if you are deciding to go to, if you're trying to persuade a group of people to go to a movie, part of their risk of moving forward the solution is, okay, well, what's going to be involved with me when I get there? Is it going to be a scary movie? Is it going to be a fun movie? Those type of things. If you don't like a scary movie, there's a risk in going to a movie that's scary, and just that alone might cause you to not to go there. I know in my career I've moved many different times, and last count, I think we moved 9 times, and we've had 14 different apartments or houses we've lived in since our kids, were little. And whenever we'd move, one of the risks of moving is what's it going to be like in the new place? Are we going to like the area? Are we going to like the climate? Are we going to like the job potentials, or are we going to even like the company? So those things, even though the value of moving was great because I'm getting a new salary, new opportunities and all that, what counteracted that was the risk of what's going to lay ahead for me when I decide to go there, and what can I do to, mitigate that risk. So we got value tipping the scale to the right. We have value, we have risk and costs tipping the scale to the left. And one key thing you probably have noticed me saying this is perception. So these are all perceptions. Remember, I said Value is in the eye of the beholder. Value is a perception. And that's part of sales and that's part of persuasion, persuading somebody to see the value and persuading somebody to know that the risk is not as bad as they perceive it to be. Know the cost is not as bad as they see it to be. So at a very simple level, we've got the need, the client's needs overlapping our potential solution, and where those intersect, that's the perception of value, which tips the scale in our favor. Our job is to find the value by uncovering the need. On the other hand, we've got the reality of the client or the decision maker, the people we're trying to convince of whatever it is, that they may hold back based on the perception of the cost. And that's total cost, by the way, total cost of ownership, which we'll get into later in another show, the total cost of ownership and the perception of risk. So in sales, just to summarize this up before we go to the next break and conclude this section, the idea is we want to increase the perception of value and do it properly and ethically with a win-win outcome. Find out their needs, satisfy their needs, they'll see value. And then at the same time, mitigate, which means find out and then manage the risk that they might perceive and mitigate and manage the perception of cost. And just to give all you sales folks that sometimes get beat up based on price, in a future session, we'll talk about how if we do this correctly, we should not get beat up based on price because price is only a small part of the cost equation. And I'll give you a simple example before we go to break. Some of you out there may have gotten a free puppy at some point in time. Well, how much did that free puppy ultimately cost you, right? So the cost of alternatives, the cost of doing something different, the cost of not moving forward with the solution we're providing, they may think that that other solution is cheaper. They may think or want a lower price from us because they can get it cheaper somewhere else. But maybe that other alternative is a free puppy that literally costs them nothing. But in the end, do you know how much a puppy costs? A puppy can cost between $8,000 to $15,000 over its lifespan. So while they thought the other alternative instead of us was cheaper because the price was cheaper and they want us to do a cheaper price, the reality is it might cost them more in the long run. So that's a simple equation to think about. Dissect it into value, cost, and risk. Find out the value, figure out ways to mitigate the cost and the risk, and that will allow you to maximize the value and tip the scales in our favor. When we come back, we'll wrap up with the last section, which I'll answer some viewer questions. So I'll see you back in about 2 or 3 minutes.
On Frank About Health, we're not just talking healthcare. We're managing disruption and innovation. Over the last 4 years, I've taken you from epilepsy and COVID to mental health, caregiving, and now the front lines of healthcare transformation. Stay tuned for a healthier future as we bring on the innovators, professionals, storytellers, and advocates who show you how to own your healthcare every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Ready to serve up success with a splash? Hi, I'm Bruce Kramer, a.k.a. the Corporate Cockroach.
I'm the Renaissance woman, Angie Snowball.
And I'm your strategy doctor, Dr. Navtej Desange, inviting you to serving up success with a splash.
Join us as we shake things up with real talk and real strategies centered around awareness, action, and accountability.
And yes, there really is a cocktail involved. Please join us and sip your way to success.
Serving up success with a splash, where wisdom meets happy hours. Cheers!
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 You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. And that last commercial was the folks that I was talking about, the team at Serving Up Success with a Splash. Great bunch. Right before my show here at 6 p.m. Eastern, followed by my show at 7 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays. All right. So where we left off was the idea of some simple components to think about when it comes to how we persuade people to make a decision, and in sales, how we show the value that makes it worth the investment for them to move forward with our solution. And why that matters is because you will be more successful in your negotiations. You will have a better win-win outcome. People will understand that you're genuinely caring about them. And also, of course, you'll make more money if you're on commission. You'll be more successful and you can have more flexibility and mobility in terms of what you're trying to do. So, with that in mind, I wanted to address a question that often comes up that, and again, please follow the links that are in the show notes. Also, at the breaks, I've been showing the website. So, for those of you that might not have seen that and are listening, teamsalesdevelopment.com is where you could go to get all kinds of resources. And yes, my book is available there as well, but this isn't about selling the book, it's about helping you with the concepts. So, one of the things about this is that you've probably all heard this idea of people buy from people they like. And I don't totally agree with that. I think the opposite might be true, is they probably aren't going to willingly buy from somebody they dislike. So we do need to have a pleasant experience. And this is why I think sales gets a bad name, because a lot of people have not had good experiences with sales. It's been salespeople that have been too pushy, obviously are just trying to sell something, are carrying a quota, so they need to meet their quota, and therefore they're just going to do anything they can to get the sale. And that's not what we want. That's what has given sales a bad name. And I was talking with somebody last week, and they actually said, I wish we could call it something other than sales. And yes, sales is in the title of my book, Making Seamless Sales, because that is what's engaged, but we want to turn it into a buy, as I said. So the idea that people buy from people they like, unfortunately, starts to lead to some behaviors that may not be helpful. For example, the overly friendly salesperson. And if you're in sales, I would caution about just being so overly friendly that it's clear that all you're trying to do is get them to like you and therefore they should buy from you. There's a lot more to it than that. So, what I really want to focus on this is that instead of just people buy from people they like, I want to flip that just a little bit. They buy from people that they know genuinely care about them. That's different than people that they like. So, like, it's about getting along, it's about having fun, and that's wonderful. And we can certainly do that. I think the deeper message here is people buy from people that they know genuinely care about them. We've heard probably the expression of people don't care about you until they know that you care. And that's why this the idea of discovery and finding out what the needs are is so important. And it starts with those needs in order to figure out where solutions come into play. And in life, this can just be simple as listening to somebody. Just listen to them. And if you're trying to have a conversation with them, whether it's sales or whether you feel like there might be something you can add, not listening with the idea of trying to come up with the next thing you want to say, but listen deeply beyond the words. Listen to what they're really trying to get across and ask clarifying questions and take a genuine interest in what they're talking about. It's much more natural than feeling like, as a salesperson, I have something to sell and I want to try and sell it. So that's what the discovery is all about. When they know that you are interested in them, they know that you are investing in a outcome that's going to be beneficial, in a win-win outcome. So that's a key part of it. Now, how do we demonstrate that in a sales context or in a persuasion context? It's really all about focusing on them. Now, in sales and in the book, I go into this in great detail, and it's a very important part of the main concept, and this is really in life too. I know you can't see this if you're looking at the video, but what this shows is this shows the sales process, which is where we often think, and then the buying process. And yes, there are two processes. In complex sales, this can last over weeks or months or maybe even years. In a quick decision like where are we going to go to eat tonight, it can happen very quickly. In some complex sales, it involves many, many different people and many stages of people coming in and out. There's a business decision maker, technical decision maker, and there can be people that are the approvers who sign off on it and a variety of other roles. In a simple discussion with maybe one or two people, it's just them and they're trying to decide. The key here is specifically in sales, not to think about what our sales process is, but what is the process that they are going through. Are they familiar with the situation? One example that I have, I'm going to have a book coming out very soon. It's called Business Life in the Universe. It's a collaboration. Again, not to sell books, but this is pretty cool. It's going to be with John Gray, who's the author of Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. And in that book, I talk about understanding a little bit about the person's personality. Like, do they want deep levels of, detail? Are they very detail oriented? Or do they seem to be quick and to the point? Those little things can help us with that buying process and understand what they're trying to go through. So it's about understanding their process and what they need to make a proper decision. For a simple example, if you're trying to figure out where to go to eat and you know that somebody's buying process, their decision process is more conservative, they sort of like something that's proven and something that they're comfortable and familiar with. Maybe again, that risk side of the equation is too much and they don't want to take a lot of risk. Well, if you're talking about where to go to eat, I wouldn't recommend the newest, most crazy, wild restaurant in town that just opened and they're looking for people to see how the restaurant's going. That's probably not going to feel comfortable to that person. But if you had a friend who's very, like a foodie and they're like, where can we go next? And what would we like to see next? That might be perfect for them. So that's an example of adapting to the buyer. And in complex sales, it's about understanding all the decision makers and stakeholders. Steve and I will talk about that next week when we talk about a very particular type of stakeholder called a relevant executive. So you can watch for that next week of what that means. So when it comes to making their decision making process easier, more seamless, that's why from a sales perspective, the win rate can go up when we are more seamless. If pre-sales and sales are working together better, that means that the buyer experience is going to be better. And even as they transition from maybe doing some self-study to getting involved with the person to then talking with client success, the buyer process is so much more important. But you know what? Every time I ask salespeople, where do they get involved on that little diagram, they always point to the sales process. They almost never, they always point to the sales process because that's the way we think, the way we're selling, instead of pointing to the buying process and what the buyer's doing. So one hint there in terms of how do you make a genuine sale is focus on them and what they are going through. Even if you've received a request for proposal, they didn't just come up with that overnight. There was something that happened. Let's find out what happened. And then finally, because I've mentioned this multiple times, really at its core, sales is about persuasion. Sales is about influence. And so the question comes up, what's the difference between persuasion and manipulation? Persuasion is about changing perceptions. So I'm changing the perception of value. I'm changing the perception of cost and risk. Manipulation is that we try to trick them or we run a sale. We have a discount and it's only available for the next 24 hours or the next 5 minutes. I feel like that's more like manipulation. You're forcing me to make a decision based on some quick thing that I need to do. And myself as an engineer by study, I need a little more time to go through it. So I like somebody that can walk me through the process and help me understand and address my needs. So they're persuading, they're influencing me in a direction that makes sense for me. The biggest thing and why I think that sales gets a bad name is sometimes we falter over. And again, I was a salesperson, I am a salesperson. We falter over accidentally into the idea of giving some false perceptions, maybe over promising, under delivering, and things like that. So let's flip that around. Find a win-win that'll help them, that'll help us, persuade them in a way based on their needs, what they're trying to accomplish, so that they feel like they want to know more. They don't just like us because we're likable. They like us because we are helping them through their journey. And that means we will be more successful, make more sales, be more persuasive in a constructive way, get the win-win outcome, and allow us to help them to help us to be more successful. So this is Art From with Making Seamless Sales. Thanks for joining me live or in the recording. Check out the resources. Glad to help you out. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's Art From on LinkedIn or teamsalesdevelopment.com. Love to discuss this more, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week on our next show. Thank you, everybody, so much. And thanks, Jesse, for all of the help in the background today.